Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the GenBio podcast. I'm here today with Amy Thomson, co-founder and CEO of Moody, all the way from Marrakesh.
Yeah, I mean, the company's in the UK and obviously we're global, but yeah, at the moment I live in Marrakesh.
So today we're talking about an incredibly important topic in frontier biology, one that is often overlooked, actually. It's women's health. And Amy, what you've done when I talk to you, and I'll go a little bit into my story, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself. I was just so moved by what you want to achieve in your vision because I've lived some of the pain of the lack of information and knowledge in women's health today. And I think it's a whole horizon that needs to be explored in health and biology and in biotech.
Absolutely. I mean, and it was such a brilliant conversation because I feel like it touches almost everyone, right? Mm-hmm. So I think when we talk about women's health, it's this huge category with many different tracks within it. We specifically have focused on mental health and hormones, partly because the way in which we understand hormones has historically been from the function. So how to get pregnant, how to avoid it from a fertility or a contraceptive perspective. However, actually how we experience hormones from the perspective of the way that they change our brain, the way they change our body, the impact of hormones on a mental health experience really is something that touches us across every life stage. And again, it resonates on such a deep level. But the beauty of something within the hormone health and mental health space is ultimately that's data that we have, but it's also things that can be tracked. And it can have a markable impact very quickly when you understand how your mental health is changing, anxiety, stress, even metabolism, sleep, energy, and then on your productivity. It can improve not only your understanding of your mental health and how your body changes and what's going on, but also how to actually improve, make small changes that have massive impacts because there are immediate things you can do to influence. So it's women's health as a category is obviously very, very vast. Our area, it still blows my mind that we've built something, we've been doing this for 5 years, we've got the AI and the ML built, that it didn't exist before. But then that's testament to how far behind really everyone has been in terms of getting funding and getting access to information, and even research still being quite far behind. But yeah, it touches everyone. So the stories are always really raw, but they are resonant and they build a lot of empathy between people, which I think is a very beautiful thing in this space.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that, about mental health and why that's so important in terms of your body as a system, right?
So, I mean, if you're just taking a menstrual cycle as an example, right, you've got, yes, the function of ovulation and bleed, but you also have the reality that the interchange between estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone have changes variable to women around your energy levels, your anxiety levels, your interaction, even how fast you speak can change variable to those changes. So when we think about that in a modern era, that's very helpful information to have because unlike a man whose testosterone cycles are more linked to day to night cycles, so a 24-hour reset, we have the changes across, let's say, as a rudimentary 4 phases where you're rising estrogen towards ovulation and then rising progesterone and lowering estrogen in the second half. The fact that we can then understand the experience from a female vantage point around those changes means we're looking at the world and feeling the world from our own body's experience rather than the majority of the time where we're living it through this idea of a 24-hour cycle where you get up, you're supposed to feel the same every day, which actually is a male experience, right? So it's being more mainstreamed in terms of that conversation and that reality. I think what's happening though is there's a lot of conversation about it, but how do you apply that? What are the things that you can tangibly do to, rather than have to be a PhD in it, to better understand it and have a very simple tool that just gives you the information you need and then what you can do to change or what you can do to address either a negative mood or improve a positive mood?
Yeah, so here's the thing that I loved about when you were describing it. Okay, I'll give my background first really quick in terms of with women's health. I froze my eggs, you know this because we talked, but I froze my eggs a year ago, and I've had side effects ever since. And it's been kind of crazy, physical side effects. It's been kind of crazy that there's no information, right? It's so challenging to find anything. And it does affect your mood. it does affect your performance, but not necessarily always bad. I feel like there are advantages. Like you can lean into certain types of work if you understand these cycles that you go into. So you can actually like gamify it, right? And like you were saying, men go through cycles too. Obviously what I'm talking about is something that was a bit more extreme, which is that like I had ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome after freezing my eggs, and I had negative side effects, but that are still plaguing me, right? But how can we take this information and how can we use it as women to our advantage, to, you and I both being founders.
Yeah.
The road is not easy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And the type of crazy person that we are, because we talked about this, revels in that to some level. So, just lives like that is the life. So how can we use this knowledge that you're helping people collect with modern technology? How can we use this to our advantage?
So I think one really important one is productivity, right? Like ultimately in anything in life, you have a ratio of time and you have time and money, right? Like the ability to maximize on your time so you are more productive so that you can build something. And that's not just in terms of being a founder, that's in anything. Mm-hmm. So I think when you are not losing time because you're you are using time on emotional like experiences that actually are just because you don't know what's going on. So when we first started the company, one of the things that people kept saying to us is, you need to go right into the biospace. You need to do deep tech with this. And don't get me wrong, there is a massive deep tech play where you look at like what are the cross sections of biometric data against user data, against wearable data, and how do you create analysis from that? And that is the stage that we're starting to get into now. However, there's a massive problem around education, I think the majority of women are not given information, no matter, they can build brilliant businesses, build brilliant careers, be billionaires or millionaires, and yet still have no idea that there are these things going on that mean that their experiences are going to fluctuate on a daily, weekly, monthly, and even yearly basis. And so I think the ability to understand and have the knowledge to inform productivity, to understand when to be productive, when to rest, to lean into the fact that your changes are for your body and your patterns to some degree normal, and understand when they're not. So equally to be able to advocate for yourself in a conversation where something is really off, you have had a very extreme shift in whatever patterns you were experiencing, and going to the doctor and feeling confident in being able to show, not just say, but also show, look, between here and here, these are the differences. So having a space not just to understand like what's happening on an average or like understand the background, but also be able to log and engage and create your own data profiles and then see patterns in that.
What led you to want to start this company?
I think wasting a lot of, again, it comes from a personal experience, right? So my periods actually stopped when I was 27, 28. I was given lots of rationale for that. So could be infertility, could be cancer, big words, big conversations. Actually, it was stress. So it was overstimulation, it was cortisol. There was no conversation about that apart from a nutritionist. I think at the time I was so shocked that there was a solution, which was ultimately to slow down. It didn't mean blowing up my life. It meant making very specific changes. So
did you feel stress? Did you feel stress, or did it just like...
I think in hindsight, it's very easy to say, 100%. I think in the moment, you're productive. Or you think you're being productive because you're pushing through the physical stress or the emotional stress. And when I say physical stress, I mean not being able to get out of bed in the morning, right? So your physical fatigue. Yeah. I can bypass. I'm very good at being able to bypass my physical symptoms to the point that my body stopped my periods, right? Yeah. So that there was no avoiding it.
Yeah.
So I think... the lack of knowledge that I had, this was during my previous business, which, I was scaling. We were working with some of the biggest brands in the world. I was traveling all over the world, and, we were at 0 to 10 million in under 3 years. So it was big and it went very, very fast. Yeah. And I think that within that, you assume that you just have to keep pushing yourself and keep pushing yourself. And actually, in hindsight, if I'd have understood the rhythm of my body better, I would have been more productive and I probably would have been able to last the course a lot longer. So one of the reasons for selling Scene was that I wanted to then do this because I felt as though, one, it was something that was just missing, this mental health, physical health understanding, the stress anxiety balance. And then also, I just couldn't believe that we didn't know about this information. And there was just an education start point where we could do a lot with the information we had in hand.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've talked about before with, I think when I was on a panel in Riyadh, because it was with regards to women's health. Women only make up like 2% of the like clinical trial data.
Yeah.
Right? Something ridiculously low like that here in America. And we're half the population.
Yeah.
And so there's not a lot of information. Yeah. And, you know, when I went through my experience and with my own symptoms, it's very skewed, the data. It's super skewed at, the commercial market. So the IVF market. And so it's skewed at extreme cases of like infertility, especially when you're talking about women's health. There's not enough on autoimmune information, like autoimmune disorders, which women make up 80%. And I just felt like when I was going through all of this, around the same time that, you know, I had started my company, because I actually did 2 cycles, it was kind of like, I was just baffled. Because again, we're half the population.
Yeah.
How can we not find, and every woman has these cycles.
Yep.
And they only have information for extreme cases. So you're just like, something's wrong. You're lost. I recently went to the doctor. She's a great doctor, OBGYN, for some of my issues. And the only advice that I could get was take green tea extract, right? It's like,
I think this is, again, it's where the understanding to solutions is the problem, right? So look, the macro reality is research is happening very slowly. There's lobbying, it's changing, but it's changing slowly, and there's the gap, right? The one thing I would say, though, around the research when it comes to the mental, physical health changes, and rather than looking at it in a specific use case, looking at the averages around changing estrogen, progesterone, testosterone into play, and looking at that not just in menstruation, but also looking at that across pregnancy cycles, postpartum cycles, also perimenopause. Look, I'm not saying that there is an amount of research that gives us a baseline to know, okay, there is a direct correlation between cognitive function, memory, anxiety levels, stress, and we can kind of gauge where those things might kick in harder. There is a need and a want, I think, within both the research space and then also within the consumer technology space, which is where we sit, to bridge in together, right? So a convergence point, because if you can show that these businesses are thriving, so you have big players in the fertility contraception space, you've got things like Natural Cycles, Clue, of course, the Flow of the world, and it's proving that there's a want and a need for it. But I think, again, this assumption that all women are the same and all use cases should only be focused on fertility and contraception. So I think if with the rising tide of consumer technologies in the female health space, there is then a clear demand, and other research facilities, other research kind of bodies are looking at that. But they're also looking at, well, hang on, those are incredibly rich, like, data sets, right? And I think that it's really about thinking, we don't sell data, so our business model is never sell data. However, we have a community where if you want to donate your data to a research project, which gives more clarity around a PCOS or an endometriosis experience, it's something we're building actually at the moment, which is basically like a donor card. So it would still be anonymized. You would still be an anonymous donor in that situation, but then we can start to think about ways in which we can fast track. So I do think there's a massive benefit to women leading with their purchase power around things like consumer technologies, which can then also, particularly female-founded technology, so I would put Clue, Natural Cycles, obviously ourselves in that category, where you have also a want from those founders to have a markable impact into the future of whatever the solutions are for women at every stage. So yeah, women driving the consumer power also is driving the better research, but it's true that to date, it's just been invisible.
Yeah. No. So all across the world, there's declining birth rates. Some of that is
apart from in places in Africa, actually, but that's
yeah,
a different conversation.
That's yes. But like, I didn't mean like every country, but I meant like we're seeing a trend, right? Yeah. A global trend of declining birth rate, and you know, myself, yourself, a lot of women that I've talked to have been experiencing fertility issues. This is something, and like, well, I actually don't know that I have any fertility issues, but I have my eggs frozen and things like that. But I can now empathize with, like, I very well could, because I've had these irregularities since freezing my eggs, right? And I am getting it under control, just for the record, since I know we talked about that, but I want to, like, I still feel like frustrated that I didn't know that would even be a risk, right?
Rightly so.
Yeah. How much do you think that things in the environment, you talked about stress, but like, you know, glyphosates, hormones in the water,
pollutants, plastics, 100%.
Is the increase of contraceptive use like actually maybe not so great for our reproductive systems? Like, I want to know these kinds of things, because these are just your theories.
So look, I think choice is important in any situation, but making informed choices, right? So I think it would be logical to say, if you are, like, hormonal contraceptive has emancipated women in many, many ways. And so I am not anti-hormonal contraceptive. No. However, I am anti the fact there is no long-tail research as to the long-term impacts, right? So with any drug, it's knowing if there is no research on the long-term impact over time, why have they not done that research? Yep. Like, where is that sitting? Clearly, it's not something they're looking to do anytime soon. So look, like, being mindful of the fact that if you are in a situation where you don't need to be on hormonal contraceptive because you can avoid it, then maybe taking a break, having choices where working with whatever your body is feeling. In terms of the impact of pollutants and like other things, I think it is an absolute no-brainer, and it blows my mind that this is even like up for a debate, that the changing world and environmental factors are not having a very detrimental effect. We know that endocrine disruptors, let's just take microplastics, have a huge impact on our hormone levels, right? You know, we can see it in terms of the impact on even within like obesity and within other elements where we know that these factors are having a component to the experience. I think that the future is that what we can't do is change those macro systems, right? Like, quickly.
I don't know. Look at, there's a new macro system, a positive change to the macro system. You're correct. There was just a change in the macro system, GLP-1 use. I mean, I'm curious how that's going to affect hormonal cycles. Like,
for sure. I think in the immediate term, though, with the mass population, you know, pollution, microplastics, and like bad additives in food is probably like the bigger challenge. I think that you are looking at a female population across the world where the stress and anxiety levels have never been higher, expectation has never been higher. So it's a compounding effect, right? But I would like you to complete actually. Yeah. Well, I think that where you see this problem, it's also, again, one, education. Like, one of the biggest issues is women having no idea that certain things will have such a remarkable effect on their bodies. And then two, we are hoping for a future in the next like 5 years where, you know, things like packaging innovation. I do actually think in those areas, it will have a massive benefit for women and women's health, even in things like maternal care as well. Like, we're it's tampons, it's, all this stuff that are proven to have such detrimental effects to our physical body, and yet they're very slow to be adopted. So it's the education and the innovation that have to happen at once.
Yeah, they got to get better innovation to replace tampons.
100%.
I don't. Yeah. Anyway, you talked about the expectations on women. Okay. So I'm very driven, ambitious, but I've recently learned how to live better and be more productive. And be just as ambitious and get as much done. But it was like, you're right, it's not straightforward. Because women, like, this is another topic that I care a lot about, and I want to go into so many of the things that you said, but I got to pick one. I used to have this notion, and I think a lot of women do, that there are certain traits or behaviors or ways of leading, ways of behaving. And I used to lead like a man.
Yeah.
Right? And sure, like, most leaders are balanced. Like, they've got masculine and feminine. But one of the things that, they did do research on is that certain types of dominance behavior actually increase your testosterone, actually increase your cortisol in females. I think we've forgotten as a society that you can lead like a woman.
I agree. But I also think, to that point, just very quickly, though, about physical behaviors creating a chemical reaction, right? I think that's also really important. So, like, we know if you fake laughter, your body releases endorphins, right, to some degree. Like, it seems mad and it seems crazy. Breath work.
I do breath work now. Yeah.
Exactly. So these things that you have an ability to adjust in a very immediate term around things like panic attacks, anxiety, generally just preparing for meetings, understanding small incremental physical changes, physical body experiences. So it's why we have breath work in the app. We're going to start to do some tapping in the app. We're going to do things which are we've got reflexology in there. We've got other kind of very simple activities you can do in the moment. I think to the point around leadership with this, when, again, it comes back to understanding self and being able to understand how your body works and how your brain works, to be able to share that in an empathetic way with any tribe, any community, any group of people that you're working with in any format. So if you are leading from a position of being happy and healthy and balanced, that will be how your team, your community, your family are led. If you are leading from a position of being stressed, overworked, burnt out, cognitively strained, that's how you lead. So I think there's also a reality around, rather than just thinking male and female, like, how do we tap into the chemicals in our body that give us the best endorphins, the best attitude, the best calm, that then allow us, even in the points where we are naturally going to feel more anxious, to have the tools to tap into an ability to play on a level playing field.
That was one of the things I love the best about Moody is this. I know it's future oriented, but the idea that at some point it will be easy to access at-home tests for hormone monitoring, like biometric and hormone monitoring both together, being something that could really allow us to track and hack, like, our psychology, but also our productivity.
Yeah, and I have a very, very clear view on this in terms of where there's, look, blood testing, urine testing, saliva testing, all can be done for panel work for hormones. And I believe in all of them to some degree. But I think that there is, with particularly when you're looking at the mental health components, I think gut microbiome is really important, and it's never going to be a single hormone marker that gives you everything that you need. We're in the kind of, look, let's just get women understanding that there's a relationship first space right now at scale. And then it's, okay, well, actually, we know from all the research that's now kind of coming out around, neurons in the gut. We know around the ability to affect and the amount of serotonin that's produced in the gut. The interplay between that endocrine, neurological kind of relationship plus the gut. And I think with testing, one of the things I'm maybe holding back slightly on integrating is when we get to the point that there is a convergence point around understanding both the hormone markers alongside other markers, I think you'll glean much better, more interesting insight from a user perspective around then what to do. Because the future of this whole space isn't reporting data and isn't giving you information and data. It's telling you then what to do with that data to have a positive impact. And with the help of a clinician, with the help of an expert, but being armed with information from an insight perspective before you just lean into like being told your like HRV is this, or your estrogen or progesterone is this. Like, well, what do I do with that information? Like, what does that actually mean for my body? What does that mean for my metabolism? What does that mean for my sleep? How do I make changes that actually can make me feel better? And that's happening now, right? And that's the beauty of the way in which AI is fast tracking a lot of this stuff. Rather than using it on a generative like front face, it's actually going, well, how do we start to use it to understand and analyze the convergence points of these data inputs?
Well, like with Generate, we want to help make the data more accessible for those reasons. Like this, it's a huge, if we can make the biological data more usable, there are so many implications that we can have in our day-to-day lives. Real-time answers to how we're doing, how we're like, are we thriving? So I want to I did want to give like a quick anecdote on the the importance of hormones in my life. When I was 18 to 20 years old, maybe that time frame, I took. Actually, it might have only been 18 to 19. I think I took hormonal birth control. No, it was 18 to 20, or it was 19 to 21, something like that. Oh my gosh, it changes your personality.
Yeah, it does.
It changes everything about you. It changes what, like, they've done research on this now, what mates you're attracted to. It changes how you are in the world. For me, it was like a dulling effect when I was on.
Same.
And so like the idea that we know that there's like a neurotransmitter to hormone correlation.
Yes.
We know that hormones are related to autonomic nervous system function.
Yes.
We know all these things.
Yeah.
And yet we're just like you said, throwing out endocrine disruptors into the world. Throwing out like, hey, take a hormone pill.
Yeah.
Go like you want to block your adenosine reuptake? Go like chug a bunch of caffeine. Like I stopped having coffee recently and my life's so much better. I never thought I would do that. I never thought I would give up coffee. Now I have it ceremonially from time to time, but it's like a ceremony. But man, like we just abuse these things.
Well, it's just also you don't know that you're doing it, right? So it's also this reality where, again, it comes right back to how are you supposed to make an informed decision if you don't know the why? So I always say Moody is the why behind the wellness, right? If you actually just tell people to eat 5 fruit and vegetable every day, the chances of them building that as a habit-forming behavior are very minimal. If you show them this is what's happening with your body, this is what antioxidants do to help your body balance and will improve your brain function, will improve your cognitive function, your memory, your focus, because of how they help and support your body.
Yeah.
Again, you don't need to go into the direct detail. It's not a PhD, but that is like the nugget of information that someone just goes, okay, so I'm basically, this is helping me cleanse my body so that I can focus better. Like, what is the ROI, right? Like, what is the ROI of those 5 fruit and vegetables? Rather than just saying, if you don't do it, you're going to be obese. Like, that's not helpful.
Although it kind of is, I was just going to say, I mean, people often, like, there's analysis paralysis. People want to do too many things, or there's too much information available. Like you said, it's not personalized. So you look everywhere and there's like, oh, there's the keto diet, there's paleo, there's Atkins, those are all the low carb ones. Then there's like, oh, just eat vegan and you'll be healthy. And like for every individual, that equation is different.
Exactly.
And we, like you said, we don't have the information. And it's a problem, and hopefully this gets solved with modern technology. I think we're at the horizon for that.
100%.
But beyond that, like if you look at GLP-1s as an example, they didn't market them like reduce your obesity, they did. They didn't market them as like don't reduce your risk of diabetes. They marketed them as like reduce obesity. Right. So with these
not even that, just lose weight.
You lose weight.
Like
look
it was
good.
just look good.
Look
it
good.
Was,
be
it
hot.
was
All the celebrities do.
Yeah.
So like when I think of like wellness behavioral shifts, I mean, I think we got to play to vanity a little bit. Like if your endocrine system's disrupted,
it's going to mess with your skin.
Your skin, your weight, like
your hair, everything.
Everything.
100%.
You fix that and you look better.
Even water, right? So some of the most basic stuff, people ask me a lot, well, what's the one or two things you can do? And I was like, get a water filter for your shower, particularly in the US and parts of Europe. Like there are parts of Europe, Switzerland being one, where quality water, don't need a water filter. It's basically like washing in the Alps every day. But like,
that sounds
sadly, sounds lovely. Very specific group of people experiencing that. Like the rest of us, like, bad water quality, your hair, your nails, your skin, everything. Your skin is your biggest organ, right? So you're absorbing everything that is coming into that. So having a water filter or a shower head, which can cost $30 from Amazon, right? So, or anywhere you want to buy your shower heads, wherever like you can actually help, very simple things. Hydrating, like having a quality water filter that's filtering out any of the additional kind of crap, for want of a better word, in your water. Drinking and hydrating. Women's bodies post-ovulation become more and more dehydrated because your body is processing through the ovulatory hormones that have gone through the cycle, right? So your kidneys and your liver are working harder in that last 2 weeks of your cycle, last phase, 2 phases of your cycle, pre-bleed, which means that you get drunk quicker. So if you drink alcohol, your consumption is harder because your body's more dehydrated. You don't process out toxicity as well. So any additional endocrine disruptors in that phase in your cycle are going to be more disruptive at that point. Very simple things. So I know it's really basic, but filtering water and drinking as much of it as possible, or hydration salts as well. And then also just filtering water that you're washing in.
That makes sense.
Makes such a big difference.
It makes sense to me. I mean, we're just homeostasis
100%.
beings. Like that's what I think people forget. Like we overcomplicate health. It's just like our cells just want to achieve homeostasis.
Exactly. So and they're very good at doing it, right? Like give them the right environment and they regenerate. Like, and it's like the ability to heal yourself is possible. And that is a magical, beautiful thing. And I think for women, especially the power of this regenerative body that we have been given, right? Like, yes, 24-hour cycles happen and there's regeneration that happens for men, but there is a whole different system at place for women where you are given the power to rest, to drive, to elevate, to be more empathetic, to be more introverted or extroverted. All the personality tropes that we kind of position ourselves as one or the other, you actually have many different facets, but understanding them, but also when you're dulling your body, whether it be through overstimulation, also technologies as well. This is one of the other things that we built into the app intentionally at the beginning was there's no continual information scroll in there. It's an app that you can use for a maximum of about 5 minutes a day. And it gives you all the information about, based on your data, where you're at, what does the science tell us? What do we know from existing research that we could say to you today could be going on with your hormones? Yeah. And then what are the very simple things that you can do to support your body nutritionally, like physically, again, very basic mental breathwork practices. But with a view that you put it down, right? Like it's not a technology where you would sit for hours and just like go in on yourself, literally.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
I told you that this was going to get back to consciousness.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it now. I have to do it now. So like we're life on Earth, right? Our goal is persist, right? The biggest means of persistence for our human species, for biological species, is reproduction. Yeah. And yet, like, you think about it, this is where we have the least information. As you were talking, I was thinking about like all of our fixation on tech, but for vanity use cases that are so short-lived, I was starting to think like, are we like, this is super high level. Are we becoming a little nihilistic as a society? Like, come on, like what, like if people don't care to do research on women's bodies and how to heal them and help women's bodies survive and thrive in our new age and environment, our species doesn't
survive.
Yeah.
We all die out 100%. But I think that's what's the beauty of so many interesting, look, we have to take a step back and look at the position of women within our current cultural context, even 20 years ago, right? It was only in the 80s we were allowed to open bank accounts. So women starting businesses, even researchers not getting grant funding, this is changing just the function of the way that research even works. So I think there is a new era which is happening very fast and very rapidly, where the access to this information is becoming more advanced. Research, if we were looking back 20 years when research was being done over periods of time without the kind of technologies and the kind of data sets that we have now, I would say we've got another 100 years to go, right? But that's also not the case. So I feel optimistic about the fact that alongside the cultural changes around access to capital, and I'm not talking about venture, let's just be very clear, because that's not the model for access to capital, but there are many other routes to access to capital. We've raised 4 million in angel funding and never taken VC capital. The ability to look at those convergence points plus research at a point where technology is elevating the ability for that to fast track outcomes. Now, there will always be a human in the loop necessity with that. But with what you're building, like historic data sets that have never been bothered to be analyzed properly for the female experience, where we are starting to see that. And it might not be that they were clinical trials. It could be social data. It could be census data. It could be, actually how many women were migrating and what the kind of, the birth rates are across like migrant women versus, women of like nationality. Like they seem like obsolete cross sections, but the ability to fast track the analysis is going to change the world and it is changing the world. And women are leading that through example, but it comes also back to my point about consumer behavior driving that. Nothing speaks louder than an economic argument. And the more that women are engaging with these products, buying them, paying for them, the more that people sit up and listen, because the consciousness and to come back to the point of consciousness, the future of our world, the future of our existence relies on a harmony between nature and society and technology. And when I say society, I mean technology.
I agree with that 100%. I like all that you just, and I talk to people often, in our ancient societies, we had women leaders.
Exactly.
We had medicine women, we had matriarchs, we had like elder women and priestesses and all kinds of things. And if you look at like ancient Greek religions, there's like a representation of every form of the divine feminine. And like we lost that.
It's so important to reference. And actually I read an amazing book by a professor at the University of Texas actually called The Medicine and the Saints. And it's actually about the medical system in Morocco, because there was a huge amount of female power within that system. But when the French colonized, the form of medical colonization is very real. Like the removal of any kind of system that existed before, or any cultural system that was there before, and then a reinvention of that system from whatever colonizing power that is. And in that example, it's the French system. What's super interesting then when you look to places like India, it's exactly the same principle when you have the British and then they colonize the medical system. That did survive, right? Ayurvedic is still a massive power. And I think what's really interesting, and again, very driven by a kind of feminine and a masculine, and women having very clear roles within that around the kind of emotional understanding components. When one of my favorite reference points for this specifically, and around, this isn't necessarily to do with women and men within, or male, female in the system, but it is to do with wisdom that has been eradicated, is yoga, like chakra points are hormone glands. So when you look at a diagram of a yoga chakra point, it's exactly in the place of where a hormone gland is, right? So if you have the comparison of literally that as an east versus west, like they're the same thing. It's just repackaged.
Yeah.
It's just one is given you are in control. You are given the information, and one is, I'm a doctor. I'm going to tell you what's going on with those glands.
More than that. Talking about ancient wisdom, I mean, breathing meditation. These are things, now there are these new discoveries, right? It's so funny. The idea that if you, like there's this early neurological stimulation program for dogs. You give the dog like a little bit of trauma, like cold, heat, shock, upside down. Now we reinvented that with the cold plunge for adults. Like, right. It's just like this idea that if you shock your body a little bit, your cells become more resilient. We've gotten too complacent. That's all because of Western medicine. It's so interesting to me. And then like, but yeah, the women and male leaders focus on different things. Yeah. Just like a mother and a father, like if you scale everything out in society to be balanced for optimal function, you need both.
Yeah, you do need both.
You need masculine and feminine in the world.
But the point is, I really believe in this as well, around like it's teamwork, right? Yeah. And it's role work.
But you scale out the nuclear family into like for the most well-functioning systems, into like government and things like that. You need both perspectives.
You do, yeah.
Like you're saying, it's teamwork.
Yeah.
You need the balance.
Yeah.
And like men focus on different things. If you look at like, why is our world so polluted? Guns, ammunition, fuel, rocket ships into space. Great. All beautiful things. What happened to healing the earth?
Yeah.
Right. Women would focus on that. I mean, look at both of us. We have health companies.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I used to be like, no, there's no difference between women and men. No, I've like, even though I'm a tech nerd and I'm a nerd in all these ways, I built a company that help humanity thrive.
But also my company is about proving difference, right? And actually there's power in difference. Mm-hmm. This idea of homogenizing everyone across sex, gender, race, all these things. The point is if we don't understand the nuance, we can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
But living our lives through a male gaze or a lens of like, this is the expectation because we built a system that arguably is completely dysfunctional and doesn't work anyway. It's not because then women are going to come in and save the day, because fundamentally a lot of this is to do with the economic systems as much as it is to do with the actual like male-female experience. But I do think having more harmony around just like lived experiences that are considered just builds more empathy into all these models. And what we know at the moment is there is a pretty clear lack of empathy around anyone else's lived experience apart from your own. And I see this like, I think one of the things of, I've lived in the States, I've lived in the UK and Europe, I'm currently living in Marrakesh, probably going to move back to America in the next 6 months for a bit. There is a beauty in the vantage point of also seeing the world from other perspectives in different places as well, physically being there, and how, in communities, particularly in a community across like in Morocco as the example, just because it's my lived experience at the moment, where community is still so central to their ability to thrive and survive, and the difference that makes in terms of a reduction in like crime, the ability to manage and understand and nuance population kind of support. But it has its own problems. But it's just, we're not learning from each other. Mm-mm. Like everything is segmented, everything is divided, and it's becoming more and more so. And yet we have this unity factor of technology, which in theory should unify us. And yet it's driving us apart. Well, and that's something we need to address.
Again, like to go back to an earlier point of like, how do you get adoption on something? We'll focus on the vanity play.
Yeah.
The only thing that we seem to be unified on is vanity.
Looking good.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny. I traveled to Riyadh recently, and you see the same like appearance influences from Western culture.
Yeah.
Right. Like you see that in like penetrating the population completely.
Yeah.
Like the same like beauty standards and things like that. That seems to supersede
100%.
and travel and culture. That's ironically the reason for that is an implicit desire for fertility, because health and looking good is to mate attraction, right? Yeah, it kind of comes back to that, the irony. But
true.
So I don't know. I think what we need to remember as a species is that that's what that is.
And hormones are an important part of that, right? Like, and that's one of the things that, again, where one of the reasons we called it moody, right, at the beginning, where people were like, yeah, but, what about the big players in fertility and contraception? I was like, well, this is called moody. It's about mental health. And your fertility and your contraception is very important, but it's a different way to build technology. You're not leaning into the kind of the mental health. I think also the other component that maybe is important in this is like, when you think about mental health, the only argument that really sells it is the fact that you're going to look better, feel better, and have better relationships, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that it's something that I have realized only in hindsight. Yes, we're called moody, but also like it's like it makes you glow. It like gives you power in communication. There is better relationships. There's better stability in relationships, because we all know that when you're communicating better, you have in your partnerships, you have better sex, you have better communication, you have better foundation points. So I have been thinking about this a lot, where I'm like, okay, moody work to get the differentiation of fertility and mental health. Like, how do we convey potentially a conversation for later, like the beauty benefit of moody, the single track of, you feel good, you look good. Like, it's something that I think about a lot, and it's definitely something that I think is an application for the next stage of where we're looking to go. It needs to be front and center.
Yeah, and I do want to like go back to a point that you talked about, which is like noticing as much the themes, the unique differences that people have. I mean, we're all different. We fill different functional niches in society, right? There are like different types of people for a reason. That's how society functions.
Yeah.
Right. And yet within that, like understanding the consistencies of like what my hormones as a woman mean for some of my drivers and my behaviors and my thinking patterns and things like that is really freeing and helpful. If you look at it from the lens of like, I'm still an individual, and I'm like I said, I'm a super freaking. I mean, look at I'm dressed. I'm a tech nerd, like through and through to my core, and I'm like love sci-fi and fantasy more than sci-fi, but like all these things that are like traditionally like masculine, whatever. I don't think that's true, but there's like tropes about it. I like technology. I'm a huge science nerd. But I'm still female. Yeah. And there's something that comes with that. There's a difference in, that I've embraced in the last couple of years and how I interact with people, and embracing that femininity of that being a super strength and asset, because there's a vacuum.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
Right? Women tend to do more cooperative group dynamics. Yeah. Right? We're at a phase where we have more technology than ever before. There's an abundance of problems to solve with that technology. And you have like, you need unifiers.
Yeah, you do.
Right? You need like in the case of like with Moody, you want to bring people to a place where they're making healthier decisions.
Exactly.
In their lives. Like that's empathy.
Yep.
Right. And
that feeds back to consciousness, right? The more empathy we have, the more collective consciousness we have. And I just think everyone coming at this from different perspectives, right? But with that single view that, look, the ability, we're not learning this in school. No problem. How do you use technology to distribute the information? How do you find commonality between women across the world through the understanding of difference, and then also commonality? Like hormones are a unifying factor in that too. So yeah, it's one of the things that makes me really excited about the now of where things are going. Okay, so the now, the fact that we have this technology, we have more computational power than ever before. Compute's getting more and more accessible. Yeah. So that means more analysis is possible. Yeah. We're generating more data than ever before. Data is cheap to produce now. So now we're at this cusp. I was describing in a AI conversation the other night, I think we're at an evolutionary nexus point, for our species. Like, I think our species is going to shift with AI. Oh, truly. I mean, it already has, right? Since so let me use a couple, everyone using it, yes, but actually the thing that I find really interesting is emerging markets using it, right? The ability for, let's just take parts of Africa, because I have experience, because I'm there at the moment, and the ability to navigate very complicated legislatory systems. So I use this example because it's personal to me. Even just paying bills, like we definitely do not have Amazon. Like you have things like getting a driver's license or converting like a driver's license to something else. Things which historically have meant that people have decided not to move to a place because the complexities of the system. Now you can circumnavigate all of that by just having information about it and knowing who to ask or how to do it.
We've automated all the junk and the crap that we don't want to do as a species now. And so this is like one of the things I'm most excited about. Of course, there are downsides and risks and fear things with AI as well, but I like to focus on the positive.
Yeah.
And like, if we lean into this as a species and we figure out ways to adapt into the new technological environment, there is such a bright, amazing future. Yeah. So tell me about that. What are you your little daughter, right? Yeah. What are you most excited about for her on the horizon, like tomorrow, of what her life could be like?
I think more accuracy around the prediction and the prevention, right? So one of the things that I think is very powerful in the future is not to have self-fulfilling prophecies, because I think this is a very fine line to balance, but to have something where you can see, okay, these are the areas of your health, of your life that you can influence. These are some kind of real truths around the future that might be real for you. But understanding the nuance of that in intangible insights that you can do something about in the choices you make, potentially. And I get really excited for a future where that is in your hands. So you can choose the experts that you have around you. You can choose the people that you have in your life. It's not a system in the US particularly where it's dominated just by insurance. It's dominated by your understanding of how to navigate it yourself. Now, I have a very big vision for what that future is. I think the cross-section of continuous monitoring and the ability for you to understand those nuanced experiences within your body. I also know the risks and I understand the downside of that for people having access to that information outside of you and future trends around that, particularly connected to when you look at insurance models and everything else. However, if we don't go down the dystopian route and we go down just the route of if more people were more educated and understand their bodies better, then they understand other people. It's a language, and that's the language we should all be learning.
I always like to not go down I try. I mean, I always highlight it, but I like to go down the positive future because we can 100%. If we focus on that, we can work towards that.
Exactly, right? And also you like words are self-fulfilling prophecies themselves, right? So we put things into the world, and that's what's created. If we focus on the dystopia, then the dystopia will become reality.
I agree.
So I really believe in one thing, which is when I've begun to learn different languages, right? So, not incredibly expert, but a bit of Arabic, French, bit of Portuguese. So the ability to speak multiple languages builds empathy. Yeah. We know that is proven, right? Yeah. So the ability to understand where languages sit within your cognitive function, it is useful for prevention around Alzheimer's and dementia. It's like specific parts of your brain that you're being able to use, which allow your brain to be bigger, more dynamic, and rebuild different new pathways, even in older age. We know that learning languages in older age actually is really good for your brain. I think body literacy is a language. Yeah. And if we don't need as many languages, right? So let's just take away the fact that we've got these social languages which create barriers between people because we have, let's just call it a auto-translate tap button where I can talk to any person in any language, which I do believe in the next few years we'll get to.
Yeah.
Imagine the brain space that creates for us to be able to tune into our skin, like actually learning what our skin is doing, learning all these other nuanced experiences. That's the world in which my daughter will be growing up in. Like she's 2 now and she will know how to read her skin, how to read her body, how to read her hair and her, like even the whites of your eyes, right? To be able to not just understand herself, but also be able to read that in other people.
That's amazing that you said that because I just had an experience where I've been describing to people, I feel like I learned how to understand the language of my body.
Yeah.
Right. But it is huge. Like I feel like I understand when I'm out of homeostasis a bit now.
Well, you do,
right?
Because you do, but we're not. Why are we not given those tools?
Your body speaks to you. Well,
your body speaks to you.
This is lost wisdom.
Exactly.
It's like you were saying, animals naturally do this.
Yeah, 100%.
They know. Like you see a dog that has a sick stomach, it goes and eats some dirt and grass.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Humans, we don't listen to it anymore.
No.
Right? Like I started noticing
in the West.
Yeah.
We should clarify. There are other parts in the world where actually it is still very prevalent, but I do think it's the convergence of these two things, right?
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in modern medicine. It saves lives. It's an incredible invention. But that as the dominant narrative where you are just assuming that somebody else will do a better job, you are your best research tool.
Yeah, we're amazing machines.
We're an incredible machine.
Yeah.
But you have the most amount of data on yourself, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that we dismiss that and have historically continued to dismiss that, it's only the last 5 years that suddenly people have gone, hang on, actually, I'm going to interrogate that a bit more. And particularly for women. There
are places in the world that still practice this. As a species, though, I feel like we're trending on having devalued it.
Sure. Yeah.
And that can be fixed. There's a lot of trend now in wellness. Austin is a nexus of that.
Yeah, it's true.
Right. The beautiful thing with understanding the language of your body is that it once you build those paths in your brain, it becomes easier. You can build on top of them. So I'll notice that I need electrolytes when salt tastes really good to me.
Yeah.
Right?
You're dehydrated. Yeah, exactly.
If you're paying attention more, if you're putting more intention around what you're eating, you'll notice when that salt tastes so good versus when water doesn't taste as good, when you really want a banana versus when you want kimchi or something, whatever it is. You
learn that quite intensely when you're pregnant as well, I have to say. It's a really interesting one, which I didn't really factor into that experience, where the cravings you have are the nutrient deficiencies, right? And it is wild and so extreme. And there's actually a really interesting one where women want to eat clay or bricks or dirt, charcoal. They want to eat charcoal. It's something they're craving.
Yeah.
And it's a nutrient deficiency, right? It's something that their body is but it's women are going out wanting to lick bricks.
Is it iron, copper, things like that? That's fascinating. Yeah. I thought of that too. I want to have kids. I don't currently have kids, obviously. But I do think that there are a lot of magical, wise experiences that happen in that time.
Yeah, 100%.
When because that's literally,
it's mad.
We tap more into the animal instincts.
Yeah.
Our guts.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, I actually don't embrace the label autistic anymore. So I did a podcast 2 years ago, and I was like, oh, I'm autistic. I mean, I'm diagnosed.
Yeah.
So I'm a systems thinker. I'm a systems brain.
Yeah.
But over the last couple of years, being able to tap more into my gut, my body, because that's what I think it was. I think that there was a disconnect between my body and my brain. Healing that, and then which enables me to relate to people better.
100%.
All of it's in. And speaking of body, I don't know if this is picked up on my stomach has been growling. So I'm gonna get food after this. We tapping into your body.
Yeah.
But being able to understand the system, the language.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, converging on that has been starting to. I'm just at the cusp. It's changed my life.
Yeah.
And then, I think about the future, wanting to have children. It does seem like that is something that having kids become the initial stage of that for men and women. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of primal stuff that gets awoken that taps us, I feel back in as to life.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And so you're building an app to help life. In essence.
Yeah. Well, it helps you better understand you, right? And look, it's a brilliant product. It does really, we have hundreds of thousands of women using it. It's an incredible asset to see in the world and to see working. But I think it's only, it's only the starting point of that evolution and that revolution.
I will be using it, by the way. I want to.
I'm biased, but and you know, it's been an incredible journey to get to this point, right? Like and it lives in the world. You know, we're not talking about in the abstract of, well, how are you going to build that, or what are you going to do? It exists. Go and use it. It's incredible. But also the future of this, which is what we've also been talking about, is where this goes. But it's done in a way where it's coming from a place of, we're thinking about the best use cases for this for women in the future and where they get value from it, rather than just, what do I think women should understand or should gain access to? It's like, well, actually, where's the value? Where is the value to women to give them more time, more productivity, and more opportunity in the world? Like, that's the outcome, right?
Yeah. And I like that you've made it. You told me when we had lunch earlier in the week that you were focusing not on the things that are super future oriented right now, because you want to get it in the hands of people. Yeah. You want to make it accessible.
Yeah.
You know, and like that, I think that like I have cool gadgets and gizmos for health. I have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, and that is not accessible to most people. No, yeah. So I can like tell everybody like, oh yeah, like this is, but what you've created is something that can be like widespread available and give market impact. Yeah. And I really, you know, that's one of the goals and things that I have with Generate as well. I think we really aligned on that, because like I want to democratize access to data. I want to democratize the ability to produce research so that it's not siloed with like a couple of big players. I want applications like what you're building and this new consumer bioeconomy that's on the horizon to be able to thrive and exist and give meaningful data to people. And so what you're doing to already start achieving that, even in an environment where these things are still really tough, where you can't easily go get it. Well, now you can more easily go get your genome sequence. That's something that not everybody knows, but you can't easily.
But you don't know that you can. Yeah. That in itself is the problem.
That is a problem. Yeah. And so, but in the meantime, you've created something that's already usable.
Yep.
And then we're on the horizon where then you can increase the robustness of that. I think AI is going to enable it to be seamless. I had this conversation on a previous podcast, like where the question was like, oh, people don't want to make behavioral changes. Well,
yeah, they do. That's just not true.
Well, no, they don't want to know that they are. They don't want to have to think about it. But like our behavior is guided by marketing. If you could put your own rules and logic of like, I want to be like healthier and look better into your phone and have like menus with AI driven pre-filter and all kinds of amazing things, which I think is a future, have applications like your app be recommended, downloaded, whatever. That won't require the same kind of effort and have massive behavioral impact.
But the behavior change is just using the tool, right? So you don't have to do anything different.
Yeah.
It gives you what to do when, which is why the future is insight-driven, action-led. But the behavior is not, I have to make any choice. It's like minimizing the choices based on hyper-personalization, which is exactly what we've built, right? So I think that's where, you know, the difference for us is also the future of where you've got models which are, they put data in and you get text out. So you get insights out of it, which I think is also the next big shift.
So many people are doing so many cool things. And, you know, there's new like agent-based models and all kinds of stuff. It's going to change the future. And I'm optimistic for this symbiotic evolution between human beings and technology, between human beings and AI. If we set that intention now, and you hear a lot of people spouting doom and gloom about technology, saying AI is going to replace us. Well, if we keep our current system and we don't put intention around things and we don't try to change, but if we set the intention now that we're going to change how the system functions as a species, if we get into discourse like this and we start talking about what's missing, where the gaps are in society, in focus, in health, and we gear the technology in that way and we work with it, we can have a future where we all live longer, healthier, more fulfilling lives with more abundance than our ancestors ever could have dreamed was possible.
It's literally the definition of longevity, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're there though.
Yeah, we are. It's so exciting, but we have to factor the female experience into it, right? It's like it has to be balanced. It has to be equated to both sides. Yeah,
we have to factor so many things into it. We do have to change. We do have to change some of the things that drive the consumer market. We do have to educate.
Yeah, agreed.
We do have to make this knowledge available to people, right? So that, and we have to change. You talked about the macro system changes that need to happen. Glyphosate needs to stop being used. We need to stop using like bombarding the world with microplastics where possible, and it's costly. And so like this is the thing that I think is going to be the next horizon of focus for it does. It goes back to women's health. It goes back to reproduction. It goes back to
the essence of life.
Health. How can humanity not just like I had the wonderful opportunity to meet Brian Johnson a couple of times in the last week.
Amazing.
And he gave the argument for don't die in an AI context, right? Which is that's like don't die is the most basic command, the most basic rule of all consciousness-driven model life. It should be the most basic rule in AI, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. Persist.
Yeah.
Right? But there's more than that. There's grow. There's thrive. Second, I think second is grow.
Yeah.
Third is thrive.
Yeah.
How do we not just survive?
Yeah.
Because like we're doing that. You can do that dopaminergically, chugging caffeine, smoking cigarettes, vaping all the time, and like eating just like whatever just looks good on it. Like right. How do we create a society that enables human beings to easily thrive?
Yeah.
I think that's the next frontier that AI will help us do.
100%. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Right? Because we got to change the environment now.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
We're not this macro system. We are no longer adapted to our environment.
We've poisoned our environment.
Yeah.
Fundamentally.
Which is why. Yeah. but we either change fundamentally as a species, which is possible. Yeah. Which I think will happen. I said we're at an evolutionary nexus point. Or we change our environment. I think the next iteration is a mixture of both.
Yeah, exactly. In most cases, it normally is.
Yeah.
But it's I feel optimistic. I feel excited. I feel like, look, everyone says you can't do it, and then you build it and you can. It gives a lot of rise to the opportunity. It's like proving the commercial success is there. Like, I feel really. It makes me so excited for what the future holds, with a view that I also am surrounded by incredible women who have ethics and kind of a central core around what that means in terms of impact, thinking through the future potential impacts of things rather than just throwing yourself headstrong into it without actually looking at the risk assessment.
I'll close on that like with we can. I recently have, like any entrepreneur, been through some like stressful, difficult, challenging times. Those are the growth times. But I can, I will, I must. Yeah. That's what I tell myself. That's what to push through. And I think you just said we can, we will, we must, right? Like to enable humanity to thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to give a closing remark on that,
Optimism and empathy, right? It's like, leading into the point that everything that we think of, we can realize. And therefore, what we say and the words we use become realities in any context. And being intentional about those things in your work, in your life, in your relationships, and doing that by understanding your body means that you're better at it. So yeah, like where we can enable more empathy for yourself, we can enable more empathy for the rest of the world. And I do believe technology is a vehicle for that. So yeah.
Well, Amy, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you, and this is such an important topic, and I'm so glad that we got to we met, and And I'll give a shout out to Netta.
Yeah.
Thank you for introducing us, and that we met, that we got to have this conversation, because I think it's really critical and important.
Brilliant.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And
Thanks.